Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Wednesday evening. A little bit different this week. Certain guy on this show is getting married this weekend, so I had to mix up
Good
the
for you,
schedule a little bit. Mix up the schedule a little bit because Tyler's getting married. Rehearsal dinner is happening tomorrow. So what's up, man? How you feeling about everything this weekend?
Great. Someone told me the chapel is haunted, and apparently Palos Verdes is falling apart due to sinkholes. So, other than that, it's great.
The chapel is haunted?
Yeah, apparently there's it's haunted in like a good way. There's a Native American spirit who takes care of the garden. So thank you to not Dean Thanos. Yeah, Dean Thanos, the Twitter account on Twitter.
Sounds about right.
Who told me that it's haunted. And I looked it up, and apparently it is. But we welcome the Holy Ghost or whatever ghosts decide to show up.
All ghosts are welcome as long as they're friendly. Danny Phantom wants to show up, we're good.
Yeah, for sure. They can't go to the reception though because that's too expensive. But they don't eat much, I think.
No, I don't think ghosts eat very much at all.
No.
But yeah, so recording today, and then we will not be having a show this weekend. But our guy Alex is dropping a show for you guys for bolt breakdowns on Friday. And then I'll be having a little individual video that I'm going to be dropping on Saturday as well. So no shortage of content, even though Tyler and I are going to be a little bit busy this weekend down in Palos Verdes and Manhattan Beach. So excited to get down there and, excited to see everything come to fruition this weekend. It's been a long time coming, and I'm excited to see everything come down on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, I proposed 2 years ago. I had to get through my master's and some other things. Now we're here, and it's here. And it's like last week, someone's like, "Oh yeah, your wedding is what's next weekend, right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's next weekend." Even though I have everything planned, and like I know we're good, but it finally hit me like, "Oh yeah, it's pretty soon." So this is it. It was a lot of work. I don't plan on doing this again. I never want to do this again. It's going to be one of the best nights of my life, one of the best days of our lives, and I never want to have to plan it again.
No, planning a wedding is not fun. Lots of I don't know about you, but we had some family drama between when we were planning our wedding. So Brooke and I got married when we were seniors in college, and we had like midterms, and then the next week we're like wedding. So it was a similar kind of thing where it was like, oh, we're getting married next week. Like it doesn't even feel that way. So pretty common in Utah to get married during college. And then so Brooke and I have been married for 5 years, almost 6 years, which is crazy.
Wow, really? Congratulations, guys. What's the secret?
Is that a serious question or no?
I guess, we'll wait for more people to show up to the chat. So go for it. What is the secret, Steven?
Secret sauce, I think, is just communicating at every step of the way, making sure your priorities are always lined up. Brooke and I have been able to make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to, like, both of us got master's degrees after we got married. So we're always on the same page, talking about finances, educational goals, stuff like that, talking about buying a house, kids down the road. So, I think just communicating, planning, having similar priorities, it all helps out.
Perfect.
And then all that cheesy other stuff that people always talk about.
Yeah, whatever. That's fine. That's just fluff.
Yeah. So, a few weeks away from training camp as well. Excited to get into all of that in the next few weeks. Today, we're going to be diving into ESPN's executive survey regarding the NFL's defensive playmakers and how the Chargers specifically stacked up into that regard. I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit more positive when the Chargers do some offensive rankings or Jeremey Fowler's offensive rankings come out. So maybe we'll get into some predictions, but for that side of the ball, but primarily focusing in on the defensive side of things because that's what Jeremey Fowler has released. So if you have missed it, Jeremey Fowler does an annual survey every single year from coaches, players, executives, ranking the top players at every single position. And thus far, he's had linebacker, defensive tackle, interior defensive line, cornerback, and safety. So basically all of the defensive positions are off the board at this point. So Tyler, when you look at, I guess we can maybe do general NFL talk here, but before we get into Charger specific, what was kind of the biggest standout for you from these league rankings on defense?
All NFL teams or just the Chargers? Because I didn't have access to ESPN Plus. So
Okay, I'll pull up the rankings right now. Then we'll go through them that way.
Thank you. Well, I don't know, guys, but you let me know what you think in the chat, and we'll get back to you. I will say it's as Steven pulls this up, the Chargers have $600 million in total contracts allocated to this defense, and only one player made the top 5. Technically, only one player made the top 6. So hopefully the Chargers get a bit better in this regard. Not that all these opinions matter. Somebody who thinks that, Aaron Donald last year was the 3rd best defensive tackle, or that, Derwin was unranked last year or whatever. It's not that these guys are always, spot on, but still you'd like to see some of these guys on defense be a little bit higher.
Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar with the exercise, basically Jeremey Fowler, compiles this list. He does the highest ranking for each player, does the lowest ranking, puts out their last year's ranking, and then obviously kind of averages out everything to put them in place this year. So Chargers do not have any linebacker, which is not really a surprise, but Fred Warner was number 1 this year. Pretty universal. I think the gap at linebacker is pretty similar to the gap at defensive tackle, to be honest. I love Fred Warner. Last year he was ranked number 3. This year is number 1. Roquan Smith from the Ravens, highest ranking 2, lowest ranking 4, ended up at 2nd. Tremaine Edmonds, which I think is kind of ridiculous, to be honest. Number 3, highest ranking 2, lowest ranking 9. Last year he was 7. Matt Milano, his teammate, who I think is significantly better than him personally, or ex-teammate, I guess, highest ranking 4, lowest ranking unranked, which is crazy to me. Last year he was honorable mention. Devin White, number 5, highest ranking 2, lowest ranking unranked. Last year he was 4. Demario Davis is 6, highest ranked number 2, lowest was unranked. Last year he was number 6 again. Shaquille Leonard, formerly Darius, number 7. Highest ranking was number 6. Lowest ranking was unranked. And last year he was number 1. Nick Bolton at number 8. Highest ranking number 5. Lowest ranking unranked. Last year he was unranked. CJ Mosley from the Jets. Highest ranking number 5. Lowest ranking unranked. Last year he was unranked. Dre Greenlaw, number 10. Highest ranking number 3. Lowest ranking unranked. Last year unranked. Honorable mentions: Bobby Wagner, Levante David, Foyesade Aluakon, Logan Wilson, Patrick Queen. Also receiving votes: Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jordan Brooks, Devondre Campbell, Jerome Baker, and Shaq Thompson. So that's linebacker.
I don't know everyone's ages collectively. I don't believe Fred Warner is an older player, but it really does seem like linebacker is this position that's kind of the same guys, kind of these same guys that we'd expect. Or you're a former first-round pick, and we just know your name. Tremaine Edmonds being that high is a bit of a surprise. I don't know where I would have placed him, but I don't really feel like he's considered in that area. But yeah, good for him. So I'm really curious what the linebacker position looks like over the coming years, because we just had a pretty awful grouping of linebackers in this past draft. I don't know what next class looks like. But as far as off-ball linebacker goes, seems like a lot of the usual suspects there.
Yeah, Logan Wilson and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, 2 younger guys that could theoretically make some leaps there. The one that I was really disappointed in was Nick Bolton. I think Nick Bolton is a top 3 or 4 linebacker, in my opinion. The way that he just makes explosive plays in the run game, I think is really rare in today's NFL. So, having the displeasure of watching him blow up the Chargers run game for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Not that that's anything like a great accomplishment by any means, but he's somebody I think should be much higher on that list than 8, in my opinion.
Yeah. I wonder so the top 3, it was Warner, somebody, and Edmonds. Who's the second guy?
It was Warner, Roquan Smith, Edmonds, Matt Milano, number 4.
So is that more leaning towards like guys who can get some of the more interceptions, pass heavy sort of things?
Seems
Bolton,
like it, yeah.
Bolton is obviously like a very, very good linebacker, but I think more regarded as a run defender there. So I'm really curious where the rest of these guys are.
Yeah, it seemed like that was kind of the priority there. So defensive tackle was the second list. No Chargers players mentioned here, which I think Morgan Fox probably would, like, for me at least, like, deserves like a vote or 2, every once in a while, but he didn't make it. Aaron Donald, number 1, highest ranking was 1, lowest ranking was 3. If you think there are 2 defensive tackles better than Aaron Donald, I think you're kind of crazy, personally. Chris Jones, number 2, highest ranking number 1, lowest ranking number 3. Jeffrey Simmons at 3, highest ranking number 2, lowest ranking number 6. Quinnen Williams, highest ranked. He was number 4 overall. Highest ranking was 2nd. His lowest ranking was unranked, which again, what are we watching? Javon Hargrave, now the 49ers, formerly of the Eagles. Highest ranking was number 4. Lowest ranking also unranked. Dexter Lawrence, he's number 6, highest ranking number 4. Lowest ranking was honorable mention, which again, I don't get
I mean,
it.
these are really good players we're talking about so far.
Yes.
So it's not like, but still.
DeForest Buckner, he was 7th, highest ranking 3rd, lowest ranking number 9. So that feels about right for DeForest. Deron Payne, number 8, highest ranking was 2nd, lowest ranking unranked. Cam Hayward, number 9, highest ranking number 3, lowest ranking was unranked. Jonathan Allen, number 10, highest ranking number 4, lowest ranking unranked. So defensive tackle seems like pretty jumbled together. Honorable mention, Christian Wilkins, who I think should definitely be in the top 10. Vita Vea, Kenny Clark, Derek Brown, and Leonard Williams. And then also receiving votes was Grady Jarrett, Eric Armstead, DJ Reader, Draymond Jones, Dalvin Tomlinson, Ed Oliver, and Grover Stewart.
That's I mean, I was even kind of talking to Morgan Fox a tiny bit about this, but defensive tackle, what a position. And I think even the analytics is leaning towards that being like one of the premium positions now. You know, obviously edge, corner, receiver, etc. But D tackle is something that affects the game so much, and there's so many talented guys. I mean, that honorable mentions list is really good.
Pretty stacked.
Like they would all start on the Chargers over the current guys for the most part. I mean, that's a heck of a list. I didn't hear where Jared Tillery was, but I wish him all the best. I don't know why that slipped out. I had to get that out. Okay, before the season, I got it out.
I mean, it just seems like in general the rankings were kind of all over the place. Like the amount of guys in the top 10 who are the lowest ranking was unranked completely. It was kind of crazy. Christian Wilkins definitely deserves to be in the top 10.
Saw that live.
Dexter Lawrence I think should be higher too, but I mean he was at least 6th. So Christian Wilkins I think like might be one of the 5 best like 3-down defensive players in the NFL. Like I think he's amazing at what he does. So that was defensive tackle. Again, loaded position. Like you go through that list and you're like, man, this is a ton of good players here. But you know, I think Morgan Fox should have at least gotten a vote at some point.
Yeah, it felt like the Chargers across the board on defense. Some of the guys that I feel like should have been mentioned as honorable mentions, I think they all just kind of suffered by being associated with the defense. Like Michael Davis was not mentioned, and I think he's certainly played like somebody who should be an honorable mention. It's not like he's a no name at this point. We know who he is. He's paid well enough, so it's like he is out there in the public eye. So that was a bit of a surprise. I think some guys like Morgan Fox, just kind of by association with the defense, maybe didn't quite get that bump. Was Sebastian Joseph Day on the list last year?
I think he was in the also receiving votes category.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like he was too.
So not surprising. I mean, he didn't, or it might have been after the 2021 season because he ended 2022 injured.
Oh, yeah.
After the Super Bowl. Or wait. Timeline's probably off there, but yeah. Okay, edge rushers. That was next. That's obviously where the Chargers are mentioned. So we'll get into that and a little bit more specific to the, where Khalil and Joey end up. Nick Bosa, number 1 edge rusher. He was highest ranking was number 1. Obviously, lowest ranking was 5th. Last year, he was 3rd overall on the list. Myles Garrett checks in at 2nd. His highest ranking was 1. His lowest ranking was 4th. And last year, he was 2nd. Micah Parsons checks in at number 3. His highest ranking was 1st. Lowest ranking was 6. Again, if you think there are 6 rushers better than Micah Parsons, I don't know what we're watching. Last year he was 2nd, but as an off-ball linebacker. So I guess he was still kind of doing that whole like hybrid thing. Now he's fully edge rusher. TJ Watt is 4th, highest ranking number 1. So each of these top 4 guys have at least one first place vote. Lowest ranking for TJ Watt was 7th. Last year, he was 1st overall. So the injury kind of weighing in there is what Jeremey Fowler wrote. Number 5, biggest surprise for me of the exercise thus far, Hassan Reddick. Highest ranking for him was 2nd. Lowest ranking was unranked. Last year, he was unranked. So, again, 5th overall, I think is a bit much for me.
Crosby has to be next then.
Max Crosby is 6th. Highest ranking for Crosby was 5th, which I think is crazy to me. But lowest ranking for him was 8. Last year's ranking was 5th overall. So 5 to 8 for Max Crosby, essentially, according to this poll. Number 7, Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. Highest ranking was 5. Lowest ranking was unranked, and last year he was 8th on the list. Number 8, Matthew Judon from the New England Patriots. His highest ranking was 3rd. His lowest ranking was unranked, and last year he was unranked. And then Von Miller, number 9, highest ranking number 3. Lowest ranking was unranked, and last year he was 6th. So Fowler writes that the age and the ACL injury are kind of a factor here. Okay, Joey Bosa, number 10 overall. Highest ranking was 5th. Lowest ranking was unranked. Last year, he was 4th. Fowler writes that a top 5 fixture for years. Bosa is another edge rusher who slipped due to injury. The groin tear that required surgery cost him most of last season. He finished with 2.5 sacks in the season, punctuated with a costly helmet throwing penalty and a playoff loss to Jacksonville. And there's a bit more for there, but you know, there's always the not as disruptive as his brother Nick, but still super talented comment that comes through every single year. So Joey at 10, Tyler, what do you make of his ranking?
That's fair. I think it no longer really with some of these guys, and maybe the same as maybe it's the same for D tackle too. It's no longer just the per play stats that matter. You have guys that are just hitting these absurd numbers that Joey just hasn't been able to hit. You know, these guys 90 pressures, 80 pressures, you know, 20, inching towards 20 sacks, 18 sacks, 19 sacks. How many guys? So like 19 for Nick Bosa, 18 for Hassan Reddick, 18 for Myles Garrett. You know, I think Joey's never really come that close. A few sacks away, but still never in that approaching 20 range. So I think just that combined with the fact that he was injured, I think it's fair. I mean, I think some guys are starting to move up. You know, what I would have said a year ago that Max Crosby's a better player than Joey Bosa, I don't know. But at this point, Max Crosby's been healthy. And he's got, 190 pressures the last 2 seasons at some point.
And he had those 35 run stops last year, too.
Yeah, all against the Chargers in one game, I think. So these guys are just, not only are they supremely talented and very, good at their pro play stats as is, but they're also healthy and they're racking up stats. So Joey Bosa, I think, deserves recognition on the list. But, him and Khalil Mack, they're very much in danger of being like in the receiving votes category. And that's maybe not even a talent thing. It might come to the point where it's kind of like D tackle, where some of the first rounders last year, maybe it's Karlaftis, maybe it's Thibodeau, maybe it's Hutch. I don't know. But some of these guys are starting to, who just got drafted 2nd overall this year from Alabama.
Oh, Will Anderson.
Thank you. Guys like that, could potentially start moving forward here. And again, if these guys are walking into the league and you guys start seeing these guys put up 70, 80 pressures, which Joey Bosa really hasn't done lately. Yeah, I mean, at some point, they're just going to be moved on from, not moved on, well, potentially from the Chargers, but just passed over. And I think you're starting to see that with a list like this.
Yeah, I think, the health is obviously the big thing with Joey. We've talked about the alternating years. It's an odd year, so theoretically Joey should be healthy this year. So he can certainly climb back up this list. I think if you're trying to rank them overall, to me, I look at edge rushers, and I think there's a very clear top tier of 4 edge rushers that make a combination of pressures, win rate, strip sacks, total sacks, and run stops, and that's Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and Max Crosby. To me, that's like the upper echelon of the edge rushers right now. And after that, you have TJ Watt. I know that probably going to be a hot take. I don't think he's in that same conversation personally.
Hmm.
But you have TJ Watt, you have Matthew Judon, you have Hassan Reddick, you have these guys, Von Miller and his, kind of older Brian Burns, and then Joey. I think Joey at his best is better than those other guys. I do.
Totally.
But it's just a matter of him being healthy and being at his best. So
Mm-hmm.
I think 10 is fair based off of the injury, based off of what happened last year. But like, if you're asking me like to predict for next year, like I think Joey's is up a few spots. I really do. And I think that, him alongside Khalil is a great recipe for success for Joey.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fair ranking right now based off of what happened last year. All these other guys having great seasons, and Joey and Vaughn are kind of lumped together where, we saw glimpses of it, but they were injured, didn't have a full season. So I think it's fair for Joey to be at 10, but I do think that he climbs up this list next year.
Yeah, I don't see how. Well, I do see how it's the injuries, but aside from that, I don't see how he doesn't. This is someone who definitely can perform better than 3-ish guys ahead of that list. I don't see him cracking into that top 5. I don't think. Except if these guys have the same kind of years, there's no reason to, unless Joey has the greatest season we've seen. There's no real reason to jump all those guys in the eyes of some of these voters. So. And it's fine. Like it's a really, really good list of edge rushers. So if he can break into the top 6, 7, I think that's totally fair. And that'd be great for the Chargers because that means that Joey was healthy, and it probably means that Khalil Mack was healthy too.
Yeah. So moving on to honorable mentions, some young guys like Tyler mentioned. Aiden Hutchinson is on this list. Jalen Phillips, who had a fantastic season last year. Trey Hendrickson, Cameron Jordan, who's been a staple. I mean, he's been amazing forever. And then Khalil Mack, that's where he falls in the honorable mention category. So he gets enough votes to be more than also receiving votes. But in the honorable mention category, Fowler writes, Mack finished his first season with the Chargers, posting 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 4 pass breakups. He's been a really good player, but always left me wanting more, was the quote from an NFL personnel evaluator. And then the same evaluator says in 2018, he was dominant, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
The high-level production hasn't been there consistently. So, Tyler, what do you make of Khalil's mentioning here as an honorable mention and what was written about him?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they started the season with Joey Bosa. Excellent. I think he led the league in sacks for a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it was. Because he started off so hot. And then there were just some games where it's like, where'd he go? And again, like we talked about with Joey, there was no accumulation of stats to the point where it's like, well, he's top 5 in pressure, so we got to put him, somewhere on this list. That didn't happen. And then I think if you talk, as you talked about, like the upper echelon of edge rushers is more than just rushing the passer. Khalil Mack did some great things against the run, but I don't think it was consistent enough. And then if you look at just the per play stats for Khalil Mack and run defense, it's actually not very pretty. I forget where he is, but it's not very high.
Yeah, his pass rush win rate was, I think, in like the 40s. So it was on par with what we saw from Khalil in 2020, which is what I felt like was the goal for Khalil heading into 2022, was to get back to who he was in 2020. Obviously having the injury and down play and playing through it in 2021. So like I think that's a fair spot for Khalil. I think it's also fair to say that, similar to Joey, we didn't really see Khalil get to show what he really had last year, because he went from being the Robin to back to being Batman when he's not the same player he was. I think that's a fair assessment. But I think with a healthy Joey Bosa, I think Khalil Mack gets a lot more gimmies. I think he is able to get less attention. And I think he'll make more impact as a run defender, because that was the thing that we noticed all year long, is that all these teams were just running opposite of Khalil Mack because they knew that they could, and they knew that they, were better off to not run his way. So I think we'll see a more impactful Khalil Mack. How much he can climb up the list is probably not much, honestly, because you have such a defined upper echelon and a second tier, and then all these young guys coming on too. Some of the guys also receiving votes might have, resurgences. We'll see about them.
Right.
But Khalil might be entering his last, like, truly highly productive season. We'll see. But this might be it for Khalil. And I think, we should probably relish in the opportunities that we get to see him play this year.
Yeah. Have any teammates both made the top 10 in either of these lists so far for D tackle or edge? I don't believe so.
The Niners linebackers both made it.
Okay.
Which
Just
is, Drake Greenlaw would be Drake Greenlaw is really freaking good, man.
Yeah.
But no other teammates have made it. I think there's a pair of cornerbacks, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah. So, I mean, in theory, I think we even see it here in somewhat equal seasons, hopefully good seasons. Joey's going to make the list. And I think Khalil will always, by nature of someone, kind of detracting votes from the other, I think Khalil will always be just a few spots behind. So hopefully they can both move up together into 7 and 10, because that would be a great season.
Yeah, I think so. Let's best case scenario here for Joey and Khalil. Like, where would you see them? Do you think 7 and 10 is realistic, or do you think Joey can move higher?
I think like 5th is the best case scenario for Joey. I think there's guys that have done, unless they're hurt, but there's guys that have just done too much. Like they will have 240 pressures in 3 seasons, the past 3 seasons after this year, versus Joey with, whatever it is, maybe it's like $150, but there's just so much more accumulated and such consistency. I don't think he'll be able to crack past that. Khalil, I think, was going to be like 9th, 10th at best, but I think he's just going to be an honorable mention, which is fine. There's a lot of good edge rushers.
Yeah, again, a loaded position. Some guys in here who are also receiving votes that I think will surprise in a second here, but I think Khalil, best case scenario, would be like the first name honorable mention. I just think there's too many guys now, but I still think that can give him a really high caliber season. He was a Pro Bowler last year. I think he can do that again this year. Whether or not he's able to stack up against the best edge rushers in the league, I think is another conversation. But I do expect Khalil to be more impactful this year, which should be fun to watch. Okay, also receiving votes in this category is Zadarius Smith, who's on the Browns now. Rashawn Gary, Daniil Hunter, Chandler Jones, Josh Sweat, Shaq Barrett, and Uchenna Nwosu.
Huh. Good for Nwosu. I didn't know that. That's nice.
Yeah. Good for him indeed.
Good season.
Yep. Okay. Next one up is cornerbacks. Again, like Tyler mentioned, Michael Davis was not listed. JC Jackson was listed. So we'll get to him in a second here. Okay. First cornerback overall was Pat Surtain. Highest ranking number 1, lowest ranking number 10, which is crazy to me. Last year he was number 7 overall. At number 2 is Sauce Gardner. His highest ranking was number 1. His lowest ranking was 6th. Obviously, last year he was not ranked. Jalen Ramsey at number 3. His highest ranking was 2. His lowest ranking was also 10. Last year he was number 1 overall. Number 4, Jair Alexander of the Green Bay Packers. Highest ranking number 1. Lowest ranking number 9. Last year he was 3rd. So got some points, it seems like, from bouncing back from injury. Had a really good season. Darius Slay at number 5. His highest ranking was 3rd. His lowest ranking was unranked. Last year he was an honorable mention. Marlon Humphrey, number 6. His highest ranking was number 1. His lowest ranking was unranked, and last year he was number 7. Marshawn Lattimore at 7. His highest ranking was number 1. Lowest ranking 10. Last year he was 2nd. Trayvon Diggs at number 8. His highest ranking was 3rd. His lowest ranking was unranked. Last year he was number 10. Denzel Ward at number 9. His highest ranking was 5th. His lowest ranking was honorable mention, and last year he was number 6. AJ Terrell at 10. His highest ranking was 2nd. His lowest ranking was unranked. And then honorable mentions are Xavier Howard, JC Horn, Tariq Woolen, Trey White, and Ladarius Sneed.
I thought with Tariq Woolen, well, I guess if Surtain was 7th last year, did one have a better season? I don't know. But, interesting. I don't know who's voting Surtain 10th. I'm still stuck on that part because I can't think of how that's even possible.
Yeah. Somebody who I think is too low on this list, for me, that's AJ Terrell. I know he plays on the Falcons, but I think he's one of the 4 or 5 best corners. This article cites that his coverage stats were not as good as they were the year prior, but I still think he's an elite corner for me. And then also receiving votes, this is where J.C. Jackson comes in, along with Stephon Gilmore, James Bradbury, Carlton Davis, Trent McDuffie, Charvarius Ward, DJ Reed, and Tyson Campbell. So you want to talk about Michael Davis? I think he's better than most of the guys on that list.
Yeah.
I would also have him ahead of L'Jarius Sneed. That's probably it. Xavier Howard, I think, is a name recognition only right now, personally. But yeah, so what do you make of J.C. Jackson's placement here as also receiving votes? I was kind of surprised, honestly, given how the season went.
Yeah, because it wasn't like Joey Bosa was on the field and the numbers at least were great when he was on the field. JC was on the field and it didn't look so good.
Yeah.
So I really think just once you start to get past a certain point on that top 10 and into the receiving votes category, there's just a tier that JC Jackson can still get to that's significantly better than the guys that are listed in front of him. Some of those guys are very, very good corners, but they don't have at least a history of greatness that JC has. So I think I'm curious who did vote for him in that regard, but there is still some respect there for what JC Jackson could be. Now, I think this list for JC Jackson goes literally two different directions. It could go one of two different directions. He's left off entirely, or he's like fifth next season. I think there really is this huge range of outcomes for him, because again, someone voted for him after a horrible year where he barely played, and it wasn't great. So I think that if he can get back to, if he's that number one out there and this defense becomes what it's supposed to be, and JC's the feature and the comeback story and all that, I think people are really going to, out of the story itself, vote for him and put him up there. So I honestly could, never mind. I was going to say I could see him jumping higher than Joey could this year, but I don't know if I buy that.
I mean, if Joey's ceiling is 5, I think that's probably a tad unrealistic, because I think, objectively speaking, he's not going to be ahead of Surtain, Sauce, Ramsey, probably not Jair Alexander. And then you have that, again, it's very similar where you have like a very clear top 4. Maybe Alexander's outside looking in of the top 3. But Darius Slay's an older corner. Marlon Humphrey is an older corner. Marshawn Lattimore's kind of older. Trayvon Diggs is younger. He probably goes up that list again this year. Playing alongside Stephon Gilmore instead of, I don't even remember who their cornerback 2 was last year. Denzel Ward could climb back up. He was 6th last year, 9th this year. AJ Terrell, I think, like I said, should be higher, but it's a lot of like older corners and like young guys. So maybe like Tariq Woolen shoots up, maybe JC Horn shoots up, but I don't think it's unrealistic that JC moves up to like 7 or 8 if he has if he has a peak season. I could see him moving into the top 7 for sure.
Yeah, it reminds me of, so Reddick moved from unranked to what, 7th or 6th?
5th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know though. Like, okay, what if JC Jackson leads the league in interceptions this year and is like what he was in New England? How high would you put that player? I mean, it's possible, I guess. I just don't know if I feel like you have to earn a couple seasons in a row of that, even though he already did it for 3 years.
That's fair. If I get 2021 JC Jackson, again, it's a very big if, but if the Chargers get 2021 version of JC Jackson in 2023, I think that player is at least top 6 at corner.
But
how likely is that? I think the likely outcome for JC is that he might be kind of honorable mention. Like, I still think that, because it's the more interesting season, I think, for me, is what he potentially could do in 2024 with the whole year of recovery. This year, I think we will see some up and down moments, but if he plays kind of like at his best ability post injury, I think we could see him honorable mention, maybe top 10 or 9 in terms of like realistically positive. But yeah, if he hits his ceiling, then he's absolutely a top 6 player on this list.
Is there anybody on that list that's kind of like a, I don't want to say no name player, because we just talked about how Davis wasn't, I'm just trying to see where Michael Davis would fit. Like he could have the exact same season again, just for 17 games and hopefully the postseason. Would anybody vote for him, fitting into the top, whatever, 10 or something like that? Because it feels like a lot of this is very much name recognition or the new hot thing or something, the rookie. I don't know where Davis would fit in there, even if he had a really great season again. Although I guess AJ Terrell plays for the Falcons. I don't know. Just curious where Davis would fit in because he certainly deserves to be out there.
Yeah, I think if he has basically the same kind of season, I think maybe voters are kind of looking at it saying like, he was kind of bad in 2021. He was really good in 2020, but up and down kind of player. Alex pointing out that JC Jackson was voted 5th on this list last year. So there you go. But yeah, Michael Davis, like I could see him getting a vote over Carlton Davis. I could see him getting a vote over DJ Reed, Tyson Campbell, Charvarius Ward, Trent McDuffie, kind of younger guys, but maybe they take a step back this year. Coverage can be pretty fluky. So I think Michael Davis should have been on this list. He was the league leader in forced incompletion rate from basically the bye week on. So he should be on this list, but he needs the interceptions. Like that's what we talked about with when we tiered the defensive players. Yeah. We feel like he's a Pro Bowl caliber corner, but in order for everybody else to start thinking that, like he needs more interceptions. And I think we'll see him get more than he did last year. Again, coverage rates and interceptions could be pretty fluky. If JC is playing at his best, it probably means more targets Michael Davis's way, more opportunities for interceptions. So I think he'll get more, but for him to get like honorable mention or higher, like Michael Davis probably needs 4 or 5 interceptions.
He's too good. He's too good to not be listed with some of these guys. So I hope the forced incompletion rate translates to more interceptions. Thankfully, he had fewer interceptions than most. So hopefully, because it's so fluky, you can go on the upswing.
Yeah, and I do think we had Ted Wynn on the show for the Chargers on Tuesday, which if you missed it, go check that out. And he talked about Michael Davis being one of the more underrated players in the league. There's a lot of film guys who really respect what Michael Davis can do on a week-to-week basis and how valuable he was for the Chargers. So there is like a group of Michael Davis stands, I guess you could call him. So hopefully that just kind of translates more with another good year for production for him. And like I said, get some more interceptions this year would be great.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you started to watch the bootleg football episode that EJ and Brett just put out for the Chargers, but Brett feels like Michael Davis is one of the most the most underrated corner in the entire NFL. Which fair. I don't think that's a hyperbole at all.
Based on this list, I think we would have to agree.
Yeah.
Any chance Asante ends up on this list next year?
I guess my first question is: are there any slot corners currently on the list? I guess it's some people split, obviously, so it's not like it's a.
Marlon Humphrey plays kind of in the slot. He's also mostly outside, though. L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, those 2 guys. That's pretty much it. Stephon Gilmore's outside. James Bradbury's outside. McDuffie, I think, like from when McDuffie came back from injury, I'm pretty sure he was slot only. Before that, it was Sneed, and then they kind of switched. So that's really the one. And then DJ Reed kind of plays slot. So there's some kind of, but really it's Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed are kind of the ones who are mostly slot or have been in the past.
I just don't see how he would if he's not the starter. And they're going to, whether he's the majority starter or not in the slot, he's not going to play like 100% of the snaps. He's not out there as much as Davis and, in theory, JC Jackson would be. So I just don't know if you can make the list if you're pulled off the field, if you play 80% of the snaps, even though you're fully healthy. I just don't think you can make the list in that regard. Although McDuffie didn't play a ton last year.
Yeah, I think Asante, for him to hit his peak, unfortunately, probably does require some injuries in front of him. Some slow starts by JC Jackson would help his case. This is kind of similar to like Quentin Johnson, that conversation that we had about like Quentin hitting offensive rookie of the year. probably would require like an injury in front of him. I think Asante is the same kind of thing, because if we knew that Asante were going to play 100% of the snaps at outside corner, I think you could make an argument that he does make the list. But splitting snaps with Jasir Taylor in the slot, potentially moving outside, like playing a complementary role, I think that does hurt his case overall. But again, if everything goes right for Asante individually, I think he could make the list. But that depends on the role.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. Before we get to our last one here, which is safety, we'll talk about Derwin James. I have to give a quick shout out to our newest sponsor, Caldera Lab, the best in the business when it comes to men's skincare. We've talked about them in the past few shows, but Tony Gonzalez is a big believer in them. He's one of their spokespersons. So, it's a great product. They have eye serum. They have daily moisturizer. They have a bunch of other great products that you guys can check out. As men, there's not a whole lot of skincare lines out there. So Caldera Lab is pushing that boundary, and I think you guys should definitely go check them out. If you use the code GUILTY at checkout, you get 20% off your order. That's at calderalab.com. Again, code GUILTY for 20% off your order at Caldera Lab. So go check them out.
It's been great. It's been really, really sunny out. Thank goodness. Starting to get warmer and warmer. Thank goodness in July, just in time for the wedding. So I've been out trying to get in the sun, stop looking so pasty pale, because I've been in a master's program and doing all this and teaching inside. And there was like one window, so I didn't see any sun. So I'm finally trying to get back out into the sun, but I got to avoid peeling. So Caldera Lab has made sure that I am not peeling, which has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, go check them out. Okay, back into the safety rankings. Minkah Fitzpatrick, Pittsburgh Steelers, checks in at first overall. Highest ranking, number 1, obviously. Lowest ranking for him was 5th. Last year, he was 2nd. So the thing with him is obviously the interceptions. His ball hawk rate, which is an ESPN analytics statistic, is the best in the league. So that's his calling card. One of the most stereotypical free safeties in the league, and he's number 1. Derwin James checks in at 2nd overall. Highest ranking was number 1. Lowest ranking was 8th, according to this poll, which is crazy to me. Last year was 4. Jeremey Fowler citing the fact that Derwin's been mostly healthy for the last 2 years being kind of the key thing. When he was at number 4 last year, that was like the big thing, was that they wanted to see him stay healthy again, and they wanted to see more production and more all of this, and he was able to do that. So James's well-rounded performance in 2022 included 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and 115 tackles on his way to second team All-Pro honor. So again, as long as Derwin is healthy, I think he'll be on this list. But Tyler, I know a lot of people are going to be upset about him being 2nd and not 1st. What do you make of that ranking?
Fine. I mean, 2nd is great. 2nd is a really good one. I actually, honestly, am a bit surprised he's not a tiny bit further down. Not because I think he's the 8th best safety. That's ludicrous. But everybody else on this defense kind of moved backward. JC was 5th last year, moved backwards. Khalil, received votes, or honorable mention. Joey Bosa at 10th. No linebackers, no D tackles. So it kind of felt like everyone on this defense kind of went backwards because this defense wasn't great last year. But that's how good Derwin James is. Like, he held his own and moved up in a year where the defense wasn't so great. He moved up and he earned it. Like, I can't sit here and name 3 safeties that are better than Derwin James. Frankly, I think he should always be considered within the top 3. Some guys can have better seasons, like Minkah Fitzpatrick, great seasons, and several great seasons, and hundreds of more snaps over several seasons. But yeah, I think 2nd is completely fine and very fair.
I think like you said, as long as he's top 3, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
It's just different because like 1st and 3rd, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Justin Simmons, those are guys who are going to get a lot of interceptions because they play free safety. They're more playmaking on the ball. So Derwin, for him to like really be clear cut number 1, I think we'd have to see like more sacks, more tackles for loss, stuff like that. And I think more man coverage too. Like, I think that's one of Derwin's strengths that the Chargers could do a better job of showing off. But Hey man, second team All Pro, number 2 on the list, I think is a great spot for Derwin. At all of these positions to me have like a very clear like top tier.
Yeah.
And I think this trio is very well defined with Minka Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, and Justin Simmons. I think those are the class. And then, like you mentioned, after the 2021 season, like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer had great seasons, so they were rewarded with All Pro honors, but they're not in the same category. So Derwin at second, I think, is fair. I think he's the best safety in the league, but I understand why you would vote for Minka Fitzpatrick because of the interceptions, because of the ball hawk rate. Like all these guys are super good, and Derwin being second makes sense to me.
I think he has the clearest top 3 in the league tier. Not push, not power, but like staying power, I guess, within that top 3. I even like Justin Herbert or Rashawn Slater. I think those guys, like, 4th, 5th or something.
Sure.
Like for Justin Herbert, I think Derwin has the strongest staying power in that top 3.
Yeah, and I do think Derwin's maybe getting a little bit of like the Justin Herbert treatment in a sense where like people still recognize how good he is despite like the circumstances and maybe underachieving a little bit. Not necessarily getting like the kind of blame that, maybe their haters, if you will say that they deserve. But I mean, if Derwin had missed time last year too, on top of everything else, like the Chargers would have been, I know they were bad, but like they would have been like one of the worst defenses we've ever seen without Derwin James. So, I mean, there were times, like we've said before, he was their second best edge rusher. He was probably their best linebacker at certain points of the season, best safety, clearly. So, he might even be their best cover player. So, Derwin just does so much for the Chargers, and I hope that he gets to really show off this year with a better defense around him.
Yeah, I think he will. I think whether you want to say it's a simplified role or more expanded role into just specific things he does so well, I think the defense. Now he doesn't have much higher to go, but I think like for a personal year, it's going to be one of his better years. It should be.
Yeah, 100%. Anything else on Derwin James there?
Nope, not that I can think of.
Okay. So Justin Simmons checking in at number 3. His highest ranking was number 1. His lowest was 5th. Last year, he was 1st. So him and Minka Fitzpatrick essentially switched places. Budda Baker, number 4. His highest ranking was number 1. His lowest ranking was number 10. Last year, he was 5th. So, maybe getting some of the Arizona Cardinal treatment, but I think he's outside of that top tier. Maybe a player who could jump into that top tier, Javon Holland. He checks in at number 5.
Yeah.
His highest ranking was 3rd. His lowest was unranked. Last year, he was honorable mention as a rookie, which I think is pretty special for him. Jesse Bates at number 6. Highest ranking was number 1, which I think is kind of crazy to me. Lowest ranking was unranked, and last year he was 6th. Kevin Byard at 7th. Highest ranking for him was 3 overall. Lowest was unranked. Last year he was 3rd overall, so he was ahead of Derwin last year. CJ Gardner-Johnson, highest ranking was 4. Lowest ranking was out of the top 10 in the honorable mention category. He's 8th overall. Last year he was unranked. So good year for the former Eagle, now with the Detroit Lions. Talanoa Hufanga, again, another guy I think could maybe jump up this list. Highest ranking number 6. Lowest ranking was unranked. Last year he was unranked. And then number 10, rounding out the top 10, Antoine Winfield Jr. Highest ranking number 4. Lowest was unranked. Last year he was number 9. Honorable mentions: Marcus Williams for the Ravens, Quandre Diggs for the Seahawks, Kyle Duggar for the Patriots, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde for the Bills, Xavier McKinney for the Giants, Jalen Petre for the Houston Texans after a rookie season. Also receiving votes: Tyrann Mathieu, Eddie Jackson, Jeremy Chin, Jaron Kearse, and Justin Reed.
Sorry, did I miss Kyle Hamilton? Did you say he was on the list?
He was not on the list.
Really? Okay, interesting.
So I think reading the list compared to some of the other positions, I think safety is the weakest group of any of these defensive positions. Like it's the drop off is pretty drastic. Like Jalen Petre, I think he was like right next to Chris Rumph in his tackle rate last year, and he was an honorable mention. Like it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I think if I remember, and this does feel like Jalen Peter from college, I'm sure he racked up a ton of stats, was excellent, working and getting stats at the line of scrimmage. But yeah, not exactly a great group. It wasn't a great safety class last year either. It was like Kyle Hamilton, who people even kind of weren't so high on anyway. And then just everybody else, maybe it's sort of Dax Hill, but he barely played. So yeah, not a great class.
Micah Hyde played like 2 games last year.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Kyle Duggar, I think, is definitely underrated. I think he should be up higher on this list. Antoine Winfield didn't play a whole lot last year, so him at 10, I think, is kind of crazy. But yeah, you look at this honorable mention and also receiving votes category. It's kind of underwhelming. Like Eddie Jackson, has Eddie Jackson been good for 3 years? Like, I don't even know. Jaron Curse, I think, is a fine like safety 3. Like,
sure,
but
maybe Alohi Gilman makes the list this year or next year.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's, I don't know. Except like some of these guys, it's not unreasonable to think that Alohi Gilman can't have an honorable mention kind of season potentially.
Sure. All right, Tyler. Let's talk briefly about offensive players coming up. Where do you think Herbert? Let's see, Herbert, Slater. We think will make it. Do you think Eckler makes it?
He should. Was okay.
At some point he'll make it.
Did he not make it last year? There was some uproar.
I don't think he did. If I remember correctly.
Someone in the chat, let me know.
Okay, so we think Austin Eckler at least receives votes. He should make the at least honorable mentions, in my opinion. Don't expect Gerald Everett to make the tight ends. Maybe also receiving votes.
Yeah. Corey
Linsley should make it. I don't know if they usually do centers and guards separate or if they do interior offensive line altogether. Corey Linsley should make it. Receivers, do you think Keenan and Mike make it?
So last year, Keenan made it and Mike was receiving votes, I think, or off entirely. No, he had to have been receiving votes. I don't know, because if JC Jackson can receive a vote, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say neither of them do.
Yeah, I mean, coming off of the injuries, I think it'll be tough. I don't think Mike will make it.
No.
Maybe like receiving votes, but I think Keenan could make honorable mention just because his numbers were still so good at the end of the season. But I don't see him in the top 10.
Yeah, so looking at last year, not that receiving yards is the big thing, but 21 players had over 1,000 receiving yards. So again, I think Keenan Allen is better than some of these guys. But I mean, you get into like Higgins, Lockett, Olave, Chase, Metcalf, Wilson, Kirk, like
it's tough.
They deserve to be on there.
Yeah.
For being healthy and out there.
Yeah. All right. So Slater, where do you think he ends up?
Well, as my name suggests, I'm irritated with his placement on a certain list today.
Yeah.
Being drafted 134th in an NFL draft pool after
Crazy.
Miles Sanders
Crazy.
is something.
Opinion should be revoked for whoever wrote that.
Yeah. So last year, I forget where Slater was. It was like 7th or something, kind of like within the top 10, but because they combined the tackles together, I don't see how he's outside of the top 10. I get that he was hurt, but are there really 9 other tackles that are better than him heading into this year? No. So so as Alex points out, he thinks he falls out of the top 10. I have to look at the list last year. I could see Penei Sewell jumping him, which I don't think he did last year. But even like the new tackles that came in the league, Evan Neal, Charles Cross, Ike Ikwanu, like those bigger name guys, I don't think they're going to jump into the top 10. They shouldn't. No offense. So I don't see how Rashawn Slater falls out of the top 10. I just don't think there's 9 other players that are better than him heading into this season. If it were a top 10 players of 2022, different story. But just ranking the players, I don't see it. Which means I'll be wrong.
So I'm gonna look up the list for last year.
Okay. As far as Herbert goes, while you look that up, I'm very curious where people are going to put Jalen Hurts, because I keep seeing these rankings, whether it's a ridiculous site or that list I was just talking about the NFL draft pool, or Hurts like keeps going or is ranked ahead of Justin Herbert. Do I think Hurts is a better quarterback than Justin Herbert? No. I don't think Alex, an Eagles fan, partially thinks that Hurts is a better quarterback than Justin Herbert. But I feel like the year that he had getting to the Super Bowl might mean something. So I'm assuming, Alex, you have him at Herbert at 5th. I'm guessing that's some combination of Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, then Hurts, and then Herbert.
So Aaron Rodgers was number 1 last year in the quarterback list. Kind of crazy to me.
Did he win MVP?
Yeah, but so Herbert was 7th last year. So Matthew Stafford was 6th. Joe Burrow was 5. Tom Brady was 4. So obviously that's a spot open up. Josh Allen 3, Patrick Mahomes 2, and then Aaron Rodgers was number 1.
So Alex thinks Rodgers is going to be
Patrick Mahomes' lowest ranking last year was 5. What are we? What?
That's all the teams that passed on him.
Yeah. So Herbert was 7th last year, coming off of an objectively better season than 2022. But Rodgers is worse. Brady's out of the league. Stafford was barely played. So
yeah, and I don't think there was enough young talent. Like, I could see someone voting Trevor Lawrence ahead of Herbert. I just don't think there'll be enough votes. I'll say Herbert's floor is, like, the worst case scenario, I think, is 6th of overall rankings.
Yeah. Okay, so they grouped interior offensive line all together last year, and Lindsey was 10th.
I don't really see why he'd move. But
Wyatt Teller was ahead of him. I think Wyatt Teller retired. Jason Kelsey was 8. Ridiculous.
Wow.
Elton Jenkins 7. Ryan Jensen, who didn't play at all last year, 6. Mm-hmm. Joel Bitonio 5. Joe Tooney 4. Brandon Scherf 3. Zach Martin 2. And then Quentin Nelson 1, who was objectively bad last year.
Yeah. Creed didn't make the list?
He was honorable mention. He was right after Lindsley, so he was 11th, basically.
Yeah, he'll move up.
Yeah.
I think Lindsey's still regarded as a top 10 guy. I just, does anybody voting know that he missed a couple of games last year? I don't really think so.
Probably not. So Keenan was the first honorable mention last year.
Oh, okay.
So he was right behind DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, that crowd. But right after Keenan was AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas. Those two will not be higher than him.
No.
CeeDee Lamb. Oh, so Mike Williams also honorable mention last year.
Really? Okay. I thought Mike Williams was okay. Huh. But either way, if that's where they were last year, then they're not making this list.
Yeah. Receiving votes were Adam Thielen. It's kind of crazy. Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr., and then T. Higgins. So T. Higgins will be much higher. Brandon Ayuk will be on this list. He wasn't on it last year. So, okay, I was going to look up offensive tackles too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I remember being really mad about this. So, Trent Williams 1, Tristan Wirfs 2, Bakhtiari 3. Oh, Rashawn Slater is 4. Okay, that's good. Bakhtiari barely played last year, so he'll be lower than Slater.
Mm-hmm.
Tyron Smith barely played. He'll be lower than Slater. Laramie Tunsil at 6. He'll be higher. Lane Johnson was 7. My God.
Jeez.
That's the worst one, I think. That's the worst one of anything I've seen so far. He'll be higher for sure. Ronnie Stanley 8. He barely played. Ryan Ramczyk 9. He was kind of bad last year. Teron Armstead, Orlando Brown was honorable mention. Penei Sewell's honorable mention.
Mm-hmm. I think Penei Cracks top 10.
Taylor Lewan, Colton Miller, Taylor Moton, Brian O'Neill. That was all the honorable mentions.
Yeah, I just don't see how those guys jump in. Like I could see Panay jumping in. I just don't see how Rashawn falls out of the top 10. But yeah, Lane Johnson at 7. 7 was the average that he got.
Yeah.
Did he have an unranked?
Yes, somebody had him unranked.
Did he not play? Did I miss?
I know he like missed a couple of games because there was like a mental health thing that he was dealing with.
Oh, that's right.
But it was like it wasn't like an extended absence. It was like I think 3 or 4 games if I remember correctly. But like 7, that's kind of crazy to me. So
yeah, played 800 snaps, gave up no sacks, 11 pressures.
Yeah, different sport. Him and Tristan Wirfs are playing a different sport.
Totally.
So yeah, Slater should make it. I still think he'll make the top 10. I don't think there's enough like young guys that have come in. Andrew Thomas will be on the list. He wasn't on there.
Oh yeah,
Christian Darrisaw, but I don't think there's enough younger players to like boot him off the list. And there's not really any like career resurgences. So I think Slater will drop some spots, but I still think he makes the top 10. Lindsley, I'm a little iffy about. Just it seemed like they really favored guards on that list. I mean, Kelsey was 8, Creed Humphrey was 11th. So
yeah,
I'm a little iffy on Lindsley making the top 10, but he'll make honorable mention for sure.
Yeah. Did you pull up running back?
Yeah, Austin Eckler was honorable mention last year. Excuse me.
I think that's what we were probably the most pissed about.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah.
God. Does it say when they vote on these things?
No, it does not. Okay. But I assume it takes a long time to compile. Like, maybe he starts doing this at like the combine. I don't know. Yeah,
I'm just curious if Eckler's trade request makes things like they kind of push him, like he's wants to go somewhere else or falls out of favor or something. I don't know. I don't know how you have 38 touchdowns in 2 years and don't make the top 10. But he was honorable mention last year, does not make the Pro Bowl, despite being a fan favorite. So I don't know, man. No one votes for Austin Eckler. I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm surprised like even the fantasy community didn't get him into
the
Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
He was like the number 2 fantasy player overall last year.
Right. Again.
So we'll see. He'll be he has to be at least be in like honorable mention for me. Like the production is just too hard to ignore.
Is there a running? I don't even remember the list, but was there a running back that
Josh Jacobs wasn't on it?
Oh, okay. Oh, he's
Saquon was pretty low. He'll be higher.
Yeah. Was Chubb number 1?
Jonathan Taylor was.
Okay, that's fair after that year.
Yeah. Eckler was right next to Kareem Hunt for what it's worth. And Hunt will not be that high again.
Really? I can't believe you. Huh.
Yep.
I don't know, man.
So we'll see how it goes. I think tomorrow is wide receiver, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what happens. That'll be fun to discuss.
Or not.
All right. All right. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out and before your wedding this weekend?
That's it. Next time I see all you guys, I'll be married unless I get left at the altar. So
Jenny's not going to do that.
Don't do that, honey. Okay.
All right, you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, appreciate any reviews or ratings, especially on the Chargers feed as well. We'll see you next Thursday, probably on this show. But we'll be going on the Chargers feed on Tuesday. So definitely go check that out. We'll have a fun show planned for you guys on that side of things next week. And then it's full steam ahead to training camp. So looking forward to meeting some of you guys in a few weeks at training camp. We'll keep you posted about when we'll be there, but I'm pretty sure Tyler is going to be there pretty much every day. So go say hi to him and congratulate him in person. So Tyler, appreciate you as always. Everybody else in the chat, thank you guys. And we'll see you next time. As always, Bolt Up.